Hello, Embers. Welcome back to Ember Exchange. I'm Dylan.
I'm Jill.
I'm Heidi.
And I'm Nick.
Welcome to part 2 of our conversation on conspiracy theories. If you haven't already, please go check out the first brief episode where Jill and I discuss what conspiracy theories are and why we think that it's important for people in general, but also Christians to be aware of them and be able to reason through both the arguments for and against these sorts of things. The second part is going to be a lot less philosophical. Maybe it'll dip that way, but it's more about we've all brought a conspiracy theory to share, and we don't know ahead of time whether the person agrees with it or if they disagree with it, and they're going to present it, and then we get to tear it apart and see if it holds any water, or in the case of Heidi's, doesn't hold water. Dun, dun, dun. So we'll see. So thanks for being here, and let's stoke some conversation. Well, so we're going to dive in. This is Mortal Spirits and Mortal Applications, I guess is how we kind of call it. So the Mortal Spirits aspect is that today I brought a bottle of the Wollersheim Family Reserve Wisconsin Straight Rye Whiskey. So we've shared in the past that we are from Wisconsin. This is a distillery that I got to actually go to and pick up this bottle myself. I've always been a little bit skeptical of like local distillates, I think, just because Kentucky is kind of the like capital of the world when it comes to bourbon and rye and those sorts of things. And so anything that you can get from another place, it's going to be fine, but is it going to really stack up to the Kentucky whiskey?
Right.
That generally continues to be a good rule of thumb, I think. My one main exception is the J. Henry Distillery. They have some really, really good stuff that I even put over Kentucky whiskey sometimes. Wollersheim, though, I think falls. They're mostly a winery, so I think their wine is very good. Their whiskey is fine.
Okay.
I did pick up this bottle, though, because I got to taste it, and I thought that this is a cask strength rye, and it was pretty good, I would say. Their normal stuff, they're bottled in bond, and their whatever normal offerings are good if you want to mix it into something not particularly distinctive, but this one was good enough, their Family Reserve, that I picked up a bottle, and so that's what I'm sipping on this evening as we discuss. So from here, I don't know, who wants to go first? Maybe that's, does anybody have any like overarching comments that they want to preface our discussion with about conspiracy theories? Otherwise, I'll just pick somebody and we'll dive right in.
Some of them are really dumb.
I agree with that, yes.
Yeah.
And not
Some
only...
of them actually deserve the like insulting conspiracy
Yes.
theorists. Like you're like, who came up with that?
Seriously. But some of them you're like,
Exactly. And what I think, and even within a conspiracy theory, there are valid things to think about. So like mine, I picked the Denver airport, which people are going to be like, the Denver airport, what even is that, right? There are certain aspects of it that I think are really interesting to think about and somewhat plausible. And then there's always people that take it that next step. So even if the main part is plausible, then they're like, and also the Denver airport's a portal to hell. And you're just like, okay, I don't think that we need to go that far. And it discredits any sort of legitimate questioning that you might have on the earlier, higher level stuff.
exactly. It goes from
Absolutely.
just questioning something to being silly.
Yes.
Yes.
The amount of conspiracy videos I've watched that had so much momentum were so convincing. And at the end, they go time travel and other dimensions, and I'm like, oh man, okay, shoot, this was great until now.
You had me for 20 of the 22 minutes.
Sadly, sometimes they've had me for like an hour and a half, and I am down that rabbit hole.
And most of them are that long. That's the
Yeah.
other thing.
Yes.
So anyway, this is a good place to exercise discernment. What things are legitimately good things to question and what things are so far out there that we are venturing into the territory of godless myths, things that we're not supposed to have anything to do with.
Reasonable and healthy skepticism is okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes very healthy and health related. I don't think any of our stuff is health related, but there's plenty if you want to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I don't know. I teased Heidi's at the top at the little intro. Heidi, are you opposed to being the first person?
I can be the first. And this episode is good because some of our embers are going to be conspiracy theorists and know all of this.
Yes.
And then others are like, why would I need to know this?
Yes. Why do I even care?
And so we're going to save you the hour and a half YouTube rabbit hole and just
You're welcome.
go through some real quick. So My conspiracy is that the Titanic never actually sank.
Ooh.
Yeah. Crazy. The Titanic, as many of you I'm sure know about, mostly from the movie, honestly.
So I've never seen the Titanic movie.
Oh, you should see that.
I'm sorry to destroy your faith in me, but no, I've never seen the Titanic movie, but I'm familiar with it as a historical event. At
Yeah,
least what they told me.
the love story is really what got me. But
I
you
don't
know,
even know if that's like real though.
That's not-
That might be the
yeah.
fictional part.
oh, it for sure is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's why everybody knows it.
But the unsinkable ship.
Yes.
Right. The unsinkable ship was a real thing, supposedly. And there was 3 ships actually that were built at the same time. So it was the Titanic, the Olympic, and the HMHS Britannic. So these 3 sister ships were allegedly supposed to be unsinkable. But the Titanic was the most extravagant of the 3. And so one of the sisters, the Olympic, actually went out to sea prior to the Titanic. And the Olympic ran into some problems and actually ended up in a large collision a couple of months before the
With
Titanic.
an iceberg?
No,
Oh,
with another ship.
Oh, that's
Yes.
a bummer.
So
It didn't sink though, thing. So it
Oh.
worked in that case. And for those who aren't familiar with the Titanic, right, the unsinkable part comes because they had these compartments essentially that if there was a hole and it filled up with water, they could close it off and the whole ship would still float. They'd have to go get repairs, but it wasn't like you get one hole and the whole thing goes down.
exactly. And so that's exactly what happened with the Olympic is that it was a pretty large collision. It partially filled up with water, but it didn't actually
And it
sink.
survived.
It survived. However, the company, the Royal Navy, actually blamed the Olympic for the incident that it was in. And so that means that the company that owns these 3 ships, which is called White Star Lines, and so they were in a bunch of financial trouble. Obviously, they had to fix their own ship and the other ship. And so allegedly, the Titanic is not the actual ship that sunk.
Interesting.
It was the Olympic. The Olympic and the Titanic were very, very similar from the outside. So the inside would just need some minor fixings and kind of upgrading so that people who had originally rode on the Olympic wouldn't know that they were on the same ship. So it is said that they swapped the ships so that they could get the insurance payout for the Titanic and save the company.
Interesting.
And it sunk because it actually was already damaged.
Well, no. So the conspiracy part of it is that it was a planned sinking.
So they intentionally ran it into the.
Yes. Well, they either intentionally ran into the iceberg or there was no iceberg at all.
Oh.
Yes, because there was 706 survivors out of the original 2,240 passengers, and many of those survivors ended up writing their stories, and they all talk about an explosion, but they don't mention an iceberg.
Oh.
So, did they really hit an
Just
iceberg?
out in the middle of the ocean. Who's going to be able to know?
Exactly. Who would know?
Except
And
the sharks.
the shark, right? The sharks would really be talking. But someone might have known that this was going to happen, and that would be J.P. Morgan.
Uh-huh.
So you might recognize.
Owned the White Star Line, from my understanding?
Yes, he owned it or he heavily financed it. So,
As in J.P. Morgan Chase.
Correct.
Right.
right. So he had a lot of money and obviously a big chunk of this company, White Star Lines. So he was originally supposed to board, him and some of the other people from White Star Lines were supposed to board the Titanic on her maiden voyage, but he conveniently fell ill and was not able to go on the ship. So that is what makes a lot of people think that he knew about this, he planned it, and he did it for his own good.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The motivation then, of course, being, as you said, this insurance payout. And supposedly, the sinking of the Titanic would give a larger insurance payout than sinking of the Olympic because the Titanic was the fancier ship.
Yes, the Titanic was the fancier ship. Obviously, it was brand new. And if you think about it, you swap the two ships, then you keep the new ship, and you don't have to pay for all of the repairs on the Olympic, because the Olympic's at the bottom of the ocean.
Got it.
Hmm.
So, if this were true, then
Mhm.
presumably, do we know what happened to the Olympic? Or what the alleged Olympic?
Yeah, I didn't see much about that, but what I assume happened and what a lot of people think happened is that they were at the same port. And so, like, the Titanic just went off instead of the Olympic. So
Sure. But then wouldn't we still have the Olympic around to be able to go and look at it?
No, I think the Olympic also sunk.
Okay. That would be big if true.
Yes, that.
I didn't actually look into that.
Because right,
Because
like if you're going to
eventually-
claim that one of them is at the bottom of the ocean, but you have the other one there, you can just be like, is this the other one? Yes or no? But apparently you're not able to do that,
Right.
right? So there must be a reason for that.
And, this all sounds great. And I always want to make JP Morgan into the bad guy. But I personally don't think it's true just because, like in a car, there's VIN numbers.
Hmm.
And so the VIN number on the Titanic, the one that's at the bottom of the ocean, is the true VIN number for the Titanic. So it could be true. It could not be true. I don't know. The fact that JP Morgan did not board the ship, though, is a smoking gun.
That is.
Hmm. There are other conspiracies where that it turns out to be, and the insurance claim sort of aspect of it turns out to be really important. 9/11. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. So now the other argument I've heard against the insurance aspect is that yes, they got an insurance claim for the Titanic, but they also got slapped with enormous quantities of lawsuits from all the people who were like, we're on the unsinkable ship and it sank. We're suing you, White
Yeah.
Star Line. So like you'd have to do the math to determine was it
Right.
actually profitable? Was the
actual, like-
insurance money literally so
Right.
much to pay for?
The 1,500 lives, not the 706 that survived.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, I'm sure the 706 that did survive were probably not very happy about the situation of having to, like, be out in the water.
Yeah,
Like-
totally.
Hypothetically hitting an iceberg and then waiting to be saved.
Yeah, there is that. And also, they should have been smarter about putting lifeboats on the boat.
There were a lot of
Yeah.
things in that regard. But if you don't want any witnesses, then maybe you would intentionally leave off the lifeboats.
It's true.
There you
Well,
go.
if they didn't want any witnesses, they did have quite a few
Yeah,
lifeboats.
they didn't do.
So
yeah,
there's kind of there's.
You're like you didn't want any witnesses, but somehow
Fewer witnesses.
yeah, 33%
I
of
want a
them
certain amount of witnesses,
survived,
not too
but,
many.
like,
They
not too
want
few.
specifically the planted witnesses.
yeah,
Uh,
seems a little questionable.
so
Paid actors.
to kind of to cap this one, why does this matter to people if it is the Titanic or the Olympic at the bottom of the ocean?
I mean, history should be truthful.
Okay.
I
I
just
agree with
want to
that.
know.
Okay. But it's not going to affect maybe like your day-to-day life on whether this actually which ship it is actually. It's a big insurance scandal and fraud if it did happen to switch, but it probably doesn't change the way that like foreign policy or anything like that's affecting modern day life.
Yeah, but
Hmm.
But it's an interesting theory.
And then
Yeah.
1,500 people also died.
right, 1,500 people died.
A small price to pay for insurance fraud,
Dude, that's my worst nightmare. That's why I would not go on a cruise.
specifically because of the Titanic.
Yeah,
I mean, most modern cruise ships make the Titanic look like a bath toy,
I know.
and I don't.
That's my point. I don't
I
want
don't know enough about cruises to know that we've never had one sink.
Yeah.
I know there was one that tipped over in the Mediterranean Sea semi recently.
Yeah, it seems like they
Really?
get stranded more than anything.
I would rather just like go.
So that's
down with
how
the
it
ship.
really applies to her life.
Yeah,
Heidi will
landlubber, you.
Yeah, Heidi will never go on a cruise.
Okay, never say never because it do look really fun, but
But probably not. She would just
It's
have to
going to
forget
take some
everything she
major
knows about
convincing
this.
to get Heidi to go on a cruise.
the amount of prayers
Yeah.
that would be had.
All right.
Well, thanks, Heidi. That was a good one. That's kind of a fun one. I didn't. I can't say for sure that I'd never heard that, but I had not thought about it extensively. So thanks for bringing it.
Yeah.
Jill, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I picked a sort of Pacific Northwest related one because that seemed fun. And initially when I read it, I was like, yeah, no, I don't believe this at all. Like, that's just goofy. But then I read some of the supporting points and I was like, okay, I could see why people might like get behind this. So,
As is with most conspiracy theories.
There you
yes.
go.
So the theory that I picked out is Bigfoot, no, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
He works for the US government.
Okay, so there's a lot of layers to this already. You are presupposing the existence of Bigfoot. And
Okay,
then,
sort of, but let me get to the
okay,
supporting.
all right,
facts.
yep, go
Okay,
for it.
so Bigfoot works for the U.S. government and he helps in secret operations in like remote areas. Some supporting ideas behind this is because Bigfoot sightings, if you kind of track some of them, a lot of them end up very nearby military bases. So it makes sense that Bigfoot sightings would happen there because if they're doing like training exercises and they like coincide with Bigfoot, it's kind of sparked speculation that the government might be involved with Bigfoot ish stuff. Now, Bigfoot doesn't actually have to be a hairy Neanderthal, thing. It might just literally be like a person in a suit,
Okay.
which is like a sub theory to the theory. And it is, again, basically a covert operative, like, for the government. And, like, he's super elusive because he avoids detection because the government is involved. And so they move him or relocate said person.
In a big furry suit.
Well, you can take the suit off.
I know, but like.
But when they suspect that he's close to being discovered, so they'll just like relocate him. Because again, if it's related,
Because there's only one?
yeah, because if it's related to the military base situation, then like
But if it's a dude in a suit, couldn't they just have like
they
hundreds of
could,
them?
I guess. Yeah, that wasn't something that I came across, but I guess there could also just be hundreds of Bigfoots. And then also because the government and like military has, hypothetically tested technology that they have access to that normal people do not. That is where we get the weird, like, superhuman abilities that Bigfoot might have, including his elusiveness or just like things where, oh yeah, like I saw him, but then he like vanished. Well, maybe he didn't. Could also
Maybe they just have cloaking technology.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay, this is probably not fair because I actually have thought about Bigfoot a lot and listened to like a lot of the theories. I'm thoroughly convinced that Bigfoot is a fairy, is a demon, not a government employee. Or maybe he is still also a government employee and is also a fairy and a demon.
That's what I.
That could happen.
Um,
They might be using an actual demon thing that people have come up with and
For
then
sure.
utilizing it for the government's advantage.
so,
Yeah.
okay.
That's a deep one though. So that's
Yeah, and so that is actually a different take. I would say that's a different take because a lot of people argue the argument comes down to is Bigfoot supernatural or natural? Is it just some sort of like real, ape-like creature that we just can't find because it's more advanced than other ape-like creatures? There's not very many of them. They're good at hiding themselves. It's natural. Or is it supernatural? It's got the ability to step through portals. It's a descendant of the Nephilim, so it's got things like that aspect to it. But you present an interesting third case where if Bigfoot does in fact exist, it is a guy in a suit, but it's a government psyop. So Bigfoot is a man in the suit because that's usually the argument like, oh, Bigfoot isn't real, it's just a man in a suit. Well, there's still a conspiracy there. There's always a conspiracy if you try hard enough. And it's not just a man in a suit, it's a government man in a suit.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, okay.
I feel like it's one of those things that government uses just to distract us. Like if one day there's nothing in the news.
Bigfoot shows up. Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, we're bored. Bigfoot.
And then they clearly have access to Bigfoot to prove the sightings.
Yeah.
Watch it happen in the next 10 years.
Yeah. So even if in both cases you could still argue that Bigfoot is a supernatural demon However, the government is utilizing that to then kind of their advantage.
There you go.
They're like, we don't know if Bigfoot is really a thing, but people seem convinced of it, so let's use it to our advantage.
My final theory is that Bigfoot is a fairy, is a demon, but because the demons always take the most deceptive track, so also aliens are demons, but they present themselves in a way that is most likely to deceive. So the reason that demons present themselves as aliens in the modern era is because we worship technology. And so what better way to present yourself and get yourself worshipped than as a being of superior technology? Perhaps Bigfoot is a fairy, is a demon. We're getting too close to the trail. So Bigfoot is trying to convince people, oh, they know that I'm real. But if I just convince them that I'm actually just high technology from the government, that is a lie that's being told by the government, but it's being actually perpetrated by Bigfoot himself. That's my final theory.
That's deep.
Thank you, Jill. I always like talking about Bigfoot and the notion that he's a government psyop. I'm on board. I think there's a space that could be real. So mine is the Denver airport, like I said. Nick is talking about Hollow Earth. Nick, do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
I can go first.
All right.
So mine is the hollow Earth theory. It's just proposing that the Earth it's hollow inside, but a little more complex than that. The main beliefs come from, it was established from Edmund Halley in 1692, so it does have its origins go back pretty far. It hasn't gained a ton of momentum, but in media from like the 60s on up, it's been kind of popularized there. The main theory, if you had to break it down from what most people believe, would be it's not just hollow and empty inside. It's multiple layers. It's almost like multiple spheres within the Earth orbiting, and this kind of gets complex, but like orbiting, and they say that there's different orbs contained of metal and creates its own magnetic pull and whatnot. But these layers would contain, one would be like a whole like landscape itself or whole other world, or it could just be all water, or it could just be a desert, like not a desert,
It's like
but like
concentric globes. So you
Yes.
see the globe that we see from the outside, but that's like just a layer on the outside
Yes.
of another
It's like
globe.
it's like an
Russian
onion. It's just a bunch
They're-
of layers.
Got
Russian
it.
nesting dolls.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but Earths.
Yes, and
okay.
people believe that the entry points to it would be in Antarctica and the North Pole. That theory holds, I guess, weight, you would say, because if you go on Google Maps, there are lots of areas that are blacked out and you cannot look up whatsoever. And they say that's where you get in, at least the main area. But
And I've also heard that there are other ways to get in. Those are just
Yes.
like the main ones.
yes,
And this is, of course, opposed to the well-accepted notion of like liquid metal and rock magma being at the center of the Earth, and also driving the plate tectonics that generate hurricanes and volcanoes
yes,
that
Like the Ring
that
of
we do
Fire.
observe.
yes.
So, what sort of evidence for this being the case do they present, other than it just like, yeah, the Earth is hollow on the inside?
So when
What supports that?
when it comes to evidence, there's really like no evidence, but a couple authors, theologians that I like do hold on to it loosely. J.R.R. Tolkien kind of based his whole Lord of the Rings trilogy on Middle Earth, which it could maybe hint at the idea that he was okay with it. But I just recently read The Silver Chair by C.S. Lewis, and Bism was a innermost part of the earth that you would go to in Narnia, and he just went into very, very deep detail for it just being a children's story. It is just a children's story, but I feel like that holds weight to an extent. But
Okay.
I thought there was no evidence whatsoever, but I did find something that was really interesting. In 2022, in China, I cannot pronounce where this was found, dude. I'm just not going to, but you can look it up yourself. It was in Xuanen County in central China's Hebei province. Anyways, the sinkhole was 630 feet deep, and they found a whole forest within it.
Wow.
So that was very, very neat.
Okay.
Yeah, very beats around the bush quite a bit. A lot of articles I found other things don't have as much info, really none at all. But skyscraper-sized holes in the Arctic seafloor. I couldn't really find much more on that, but um, lots of deep holes that kind of can't be explained and are there. They exist, and we can't really prove what they do or if it has anything to do with the center of the earth. But the Russian mining project, I looked a little more into. I did that briefly, but I did more into Mel's Hole.
Essentially, it was an experimental Russian mining project where their goal was just to dig as deep as they could, and they went several miles down. The thing is that the Earth is actually just really big around. So even though they dug and dug and dug with like the best equipment that we have, they got to a point where it got so hot that their tools were just melting. And even so, they're only a third of the way through the Earth's crust, if you take the normal theory of the way that the Earth's layers are, right? So even at several miles down, you're only a third of the way through the crust. You're not even close to the mantle, which is the first layer of like molten stuff, supposedly. And the rumor is that when they got a third of the way down, the heat was unbearable. They couldn't keep going because their equipment was breaking and people were not doing well. And they broke through into something. And that something was like this underground cavern space where they heard people screaming in torment. So did they open up a portal to hell? Is hell a real place that's in the middle of the earth? Is that what is talked about in, is it Exodus? When the sons of Korah rebel against God and are swallowed up alive and went down alive into Hades by the earth. Like, is that a real place that they went to? Don't know. But that's what the Russian thing is. It's closed off and you can't go look at it. Suspicious.
Yes.
But that's the deepest that anyone's ever dug, and they abandoned it, presumably because of this screaming.
But didn't they prove that the screaming was like literally a loop of a movie?
Yes, they did. I think that the recording of it.
But
Now, that's
what a
not to
great
say
cover up, though, right?
that. Now you're talking like a conspiracy theorist. Whether the recording was fabricated to discredit the testimony of the people who were there, there's no way of knowing.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, there you go. Do
Layers.
you want to briefly summarize Mel's Hole?
Yeah, just Mel's Hole. I believe Mel Waters was the guy's name. He initially gained momentum from this story on the Art Bell radio show, Coast to Coast. He called in for multiple calls. I had a first call. It was very successful, and they had a couple other calls. But he called in saying that he had this property, and there was a hole in it so deep that he would throw 15 miles of fishing line with a weight on it and bring it back up dry.
Yeah, nothing at the bottom.
Yeah, it's just, and he would talk about supernatural stuff that would happen around it. Like he knew a dog that ran into the hole, and then he like saw it, and then it disappeared. And it sounds pretty crazy, but
And then then this leads to like Men in Black.
yes.
Then at some point, Men in Black showed up at his property, which is like code word for like it's basically like the movies, which are also a psyop cover up of the real Men in Black, which do exist.
Yes.
Everything's coming together. The thing about Mel's Hole is that like nobody's ever actually seen it.
Yeah, no one can find it, so it doesn't have a lot of.
It sounds like this dude was yanking some chains, but if he wasn't yanking some chains,
Mel's Hole.
Mel's Hole.
Yeah.
I would believe it if he put like a fish or something at the bottom and he put it 15 miles down and then like it came back bitten off or something.
But then there would be something in the hole. He wasn't.
Yeah,
He wasn't
which would be
claiming that there
cool.
was something in the hole. He just was claiming.
But isn't that what
Yeah.
the Hollow Earth theory is? Is that there's like other universes?
Well,
Potentially,
but,
that's not
yeah,
always.
it's
it
not
could
always.
Just be, it could just be vegetation or like the sinkhole that they found of forest. Like this next layer could be forest. The layer after that could be a desert, and then people could live in the next hole down or the next layer down.
This is where it starts to get very very fringe. If it wasn't fringe enough already,
Yeah.
some people say that. Well, okay, no, there are actual documented cases where the Nazis during World War II were very interested in Antarctica, and they said expeditions down there. Why on earth would they want to do that? You read some of the writings and some of the occult beliefs that they had, and the theory is that they believed and had discovered the Hollow Earth. So some people think that Hitler didn't actually kill himself in the bunker. He actually just went into Hollow Earth and he's still living down there.
Yes, I think they believe he went to Argatha, which is part of the Buddhist religion. But
So that is if we weren't fringe enough already. Anyway,
Cool.
yeah,
Anyway,
there you go. Hollow Earth.
do we believe in Hollow Earth now?
I don't. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I
My
think it's highly
fantasy-
improbable.
I don't think so either.
Well, thank you, Nick. Hollow Earth.
Hollow Earth.
Mel's Hole is really interesting too. If you
It
just
is.
want to like, at the very least, the dude was a very good storyteller, and so that's some of these things, right? Is like
yeah,
who can tell a really intriguing and compelling story, and Mel did a good job, I thought.
yeah.
I'm gonna wrap us up talking about the Denver airport.
Great.
Raise your hand if you had heard that there's a conspiracy involving the Denver airport before this. I know Nick has. You had?
Well, the Illuminati.
Okay. Jill, I don't think you would.
No, I heard
Okay.
some. I had some various things that they were weird, but
So,
Yeah.
so the one sentence summary of this conspiracy theory is that there's a secret organization whose identity is up for debate, who has private bunkers that are built in the abandoned tunnels underneath the Denver airport. And the conspiracy aspect comes associated with things like the New World Order or the Freemasons or the Illuminati. Also, the lizard people,
Yes.
because we're actually ruled by a race of lizard people who wear human skin. And if you don't believe me, you should check out some photos of Gavin Newsom because he's a lizard person.
Okay, that I believe.
Anyway, if you can't tell I'm being sarcastic, I'm very sorry. You need help. All the way up to the point of there being a portal to hell. Maybe Mel's hole is under the Denver airport, or another hole,
Or
and
someone
and they
else's
covered
hole.
it up. Someone else's hole. Anyway, so like, why would you even think that the Denver airport has anything weird going on? Well, first off, it is the second largest airport in the world. It covers over 52 square miles, which is huge for an airport, right? And it's in the middle of the United States. It's not like on a coast. It's kind of far away from like other countries. It is an international airport, but it's like kind of smack dab in the middle. It's a weird place to put the second biggest airport in the world and have it cover just this massive area, okay? When they constructed it in the 90s, they budgeted the project at $2.8 billion. The final price tag was $4.8 billion. So they were $2 billion over budget and on the order of like 40% over budget, right? If it was like they were $2 billion over budget and the project was $100 billion, I'd be like, okay, yes, $2 billion sounds like a big number, but in contrast to how much it actually costs, cost overruns is a very common thing when it comes to big construction projects. But when you're like almost double the cost, that's where people are like, huh, did they actually only build the things that they said they were building? And they were 16 months past schedule when they completed it. The main feature that people latch onto is that supposedly they were supposed to build out this state-of-the-art brand new automatic baggage transfer system through tunnels underneath the airport. And it never worked, and so they don't use it anymore. So there are miles on miles of abandoned tunnels underneath the Denver airport that are not used for anything, and some of them they get used for other forms of transportation now. But there's like no way of knowing, like, oh, we use this 10% of it, and there's like 90% of it that stays unused and nobody goes into it. Nobody knows anything about what happens. Now, the Denver airport has tried to address this by offering tours of the tunnels to journalists. But really, like, if they're giving the tour, how do you know that they're showing you everything? You have no idea. Like, are they taking you behind every single closed door? Probably not. It's an airport. We know how TSA works. You can't just go anywhere you want.
Right, you could blow up the whole Denver airport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
If you were like to smuggle in a bomb.
Oh
or something,
yes,
Right.
yes.
Okay. One of the things that was associated with the finishing, or the final completion of this airport was a time capsule. And labeled on this time capsule is the New World Airport Commission with a whole bunch of Freemasonry signs. And so people think that perhaps when you say New World Airport Commission, that sounds awful lot like New World Order, global elite cabal of secret shadow government sort of thing that's running everything. And this is their main hub. So end of the world apocalyptic thing. They're going to nuke everybody else. All the elites fly into Denver. They go into their bunkers in the underground tunnels, and they nuke everything. And so the argument there, this is where like the speculation I'm actually okay with, because if you were want to do that, you'd want to have the ability to go straight out of your private jet into the bunker. You don't want to have to land somewhere in the middle of nowhere. People are like, well, why wouldn't you put it out in the middle of Wyoming where no one's going to see you? Yeah, but if you're flying in global elites from all over the world, where are they going to land all these private planes in Wyoming, and people aren't going to know about it?
Right.
A great place to put it is underneath an existing airport. You fly in, you go in the bunker, you're safe. And you can go through the tunnels. Nobody ever has to see you do that. And it's very central. So we talked about how it's weird that it's this ginormous airport in the middle of the United States. It's not close to any coasts or anything. But if you were trying to hide out from an attack on the major coastal areas, you'd go to the center of the country. Denver makes really good sense in that case.
Except it's not that central.
I mean, compared to like New York
Not
or...
compared to Minneapolis
Atlanta.
or Chicago or
Yeah, but you're pretty close to Canada.
not Chicago.
I mean, compared to Denver, it is.
And if you're saying the United States of America, you probably actually even be more central because Dallas-Fort Worth is Dallas or Texas is just such a giant state.
It is giant, but it's close to Mexico.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is the argument that gets made,
Sure.
right? Okay.
Denver's also in the mountains. I don't know if that would have anything to do with anything.
Well, so one theory would be that the bunker isn't actually under the airport, but the tunnels lead to bunkers that are in the mountains. Because there's also a theory, because NORAD is relatively close by to the Denver airport. So there's supposed to be like a 100-mile long tunnel leading from under the airport to NORAD,
Sorry, what's NORAD?
the secret government base thing.
Okay, that makes sense.
I
Like
did
area
not know
f-
that.
like
I've
Area
never heard that
51.
before.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like specifically aliens, but they
No,
they do top secret
it's
stuff
not
there.
another alien thing, but like
Yeah.
a top secret government.
Yeah.
Enclosed,
So
high security.
the last piece of the argument comes from some of the aesthetic choices that have been made. So first off, there's a series of 3 murals in the airport called Children of the World Dream of Peace. And it's the series of 3 where it's this like dude with swords and guns killing babies and women and ravaging a countryside. And the second one is like slightly more peaceful, and the third one is even more peaceful. The conspiracy theorists say that you should actually read those backwards, and they're basically laying out the plan for you of what they want to do to take things that are peaceful and destroy it. That I definitely don't buy, because the poor artist guy that made them, he's just like a dude, and like he like gets death threats all the time now because everyone thinks that he hid these New World Order messages in these paintings, and he's like, dude, I just want to do my art. Please leave me alone. So I don't really buy that. I feel bad for the dude.
It's rough.
The second piece is the Notre Denver gargoyles. So there's 2 gargoyle sculptures that sit in suitcases that watch over the baggage claim area. And the claim is that those are representative of demonic entities that are present and watching over all the passengers that pass through.
Don't they talk?
They do talk.
Yeah.
I don't know what they say.
They're like
but-
animatronics, yeah, and they say things. Yeah.
The real reason is that there used to be a Samsonite luggage factory in the area, and their logo used to be a gargoyle. So they put the gargoyles in they're like literally sitting in suitcases in the sculptures.
They're just
watching
they're
the
advertising
baggage.
for themselves.
Yeah, so it's like an homage to Samsonite. That's what the normies think anyway, but everyone really knows that they're demonic gargoyles. The last one, though, this one I don't really have a good explanation for, and this is Blucifer. Blucifer is a blue horse sculpture of a wild Mustang with glowing red eyes.
Oh yeah, the glowing red eyes guy.
And if
Red
you haven't
eyes
seen
eye.
a picture of Blucifer, you should go look it up. This horse looks really scary. And the thing about Blucifer is that the sculptor, the sculpture killed him while he was making it. So he like cut himself on it, or it fell on him or something when he was partway done, and actually killed the guy that made it. And so his studio had to finish it, and then they still installed it. And so there's this horse, this blue horse with demonic glowing red eyes somewhere on the campus of the Denver airport. And that's intended to represent the true nature of what's going on there.
It's pretty big too.
Yeah, it's not a small
yeah,
sculpture.
yeah,
So,
it
like, I mean,
is.
if it fell on you,
Yeah.
it makes sense that you would die.
Mhm.
But the horse has a kill record, even
yeah,
though it's just a
it's got
sculpture.
bodies.
So,
Okay,
my
that's a sketch. But it's such a big airport. 52 square miles, you said?
at least
Yeah,
52 square
52
miles.
square miles.
Yep.
The Lucifer thing that I saw though was like the guy who was designing it did die, which was sad because his
And suspicious.
and suspicious because the
I mean,
statue
people
fell
die.
on his like on him. So, but his dad was like the owner of like a neon shop sign shop. So it's
And
like
that's
in
why it has glowing red
yeah,
eyes.
it's like in honor of that.
That sounds pretty sus to me.
I
That
know.
does, yeah.
Sounds super normal.
I'm just
What's
saying he
what's
like
the epitome of evil? Glowing red eyes.
yeah.
Everyone knows.
I mean, the guy like had a bunch of neon signs, so he like
And
was
he died, so maybe they weren't supposed to be
maybe they weren't, but
red. They're supposed to be normal white.
You never know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think it's kind of a load of bunk. I think that you could make the case that if there were a shadow government or the Illuminati or the Freemasons or the New World Order or whatever, and they were to have a secret bunker, putting it under an airport in a bunch of abandoned tunnels isn't a bad idea. So speculating that and observing, wow, it's weird that this thing was so over budget. The airport is way too big for what you'd expect it to be, all this stuff. Maybe there's something hidden in those tunnels. Okay. All the way to the like lizard people and the artwork is laying out their grand plan for destroying humanity. That seems a little much. The one thing I would note though is I hear people make the argument, well, if they were going to do something like that, why would they put their symbols all over it? Like they're just telling everybody what they're doing. Like that seems really dumb. But one of the hallmarks of like a serial killer is that they sign their work. They have a calling card, right? And so I think that it is entirely plausible that if that is the case, whoever this group is so arrogant that they are comfortable labeling what they do and saying, yes, this is us, and you're not going to do anything about it. So I don't see that as like a detractor necessarily. So
I think one of the detractors I saw that we kind of talked about in the first episode though, which was like if you are going to conspire something, whether it's good or bad, you generally want to keep your group that knows about the conspiracy or like your plan relatively small, especially nowadays because information is so instant. You can't really keep something a secret that well if just like everybody or the general public knows, right? The more people that know, the higher chance it is to get out.
Right.
And the one with the airport that I saw is that like just normal airport employees are actually allowed to use the tunnels. Even though the baggage claim thing didn't work out, they do utilize them for different like use. And yes, like you can shut doors or block things off. But again, like if you're like gonna plan some world ending thing and oops, we forgot to clear out all the regular employees today, or like
Yeah.
it you lose a lot of opportunity to keep it secretive if people are just literally roaming around there regularly like a normal day.
But they do say the best place to hide something is right under your own
it's in
nose.
plain sight. Yeah. Sounds like one of us needs to become an employee at the Denver airport, and we can know for sure.
Or interview someone who works
Probably for the pilots. Anybody know any pilots?
Yeah.
there. I do.
My cousin's a pilot.
You're about to miss a flight and they just use that tunnel and it'll get you right over there.
That's what I'd say, yeah.
Potentially.
Anyway, Denver airport.
That I believe.
Right. That's the most plausible of the four.
Sure.
The tunnels, though. I mean, the tunnels are something. I don't
That's
know.
the thing. I agree with Jill. I think that you have to keep the number of people in on it as minimal as possible. But I think it's also really easy to hide like an entire 5 square miles of tunnel network behind a single inconspicuous door that nobody bothers.
I agree.
And then it's like, oh, nah, nobody goes in there. It's fine. That's above your pay grade. But it's above everyone's pay grade.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it like not that busy of an airport for its size compared to like Atlanta and Chicago?
I think that might be true. I don't know for sure.
I don't know either. I vaguely remember hearing
But
something.
physical size wise, it is the second largest in the world, which is suspicious.
Oh.
Yeah.
What's the largest? China?
It's not in the US.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but anyway. Embers, some food for thought. If any of these is intriguing to you, remember, we don't engage in godless myths, but sometimes we enjoy a bit of recreational wild speculation, and that's okay as long as you're like realizing that we have an authoritative source of truth and we always go back to that. Thank you for being with us on this journey. If you have other ones that you think would be fun for us to talk about, obviously Nick and I could do this for like literal hours. And I think you guys also had some fun, hopefully, engaging these things as well. But leave a comment and let us know what you think and if you'd like to hear us talk about some other stuff.
If you're listening to this, you've caught us on one platform, and we are on many. Any likes, reviews, and subscribes helps us out.
Yep, we're also on short form, so be sure to share those with your friends.
And remember, burn bright, embers.